All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a good night. My name is Jessica Highlander, and I'm one of the dietitians that works for the Eat to Win app, or My Sports Dietitian. So tonight we're going to talk about the topic of fueling an athlete that follows a plant-based diet and how to do that. Um, so we're going to go ahead and first I'm just going to introduce myself. So, as I said, my name is Jessica Highlander. I currently am the Assistant Athletics Director of Sports Nutrition over at Texas Christian University. But I also have experience in both the SEC at the University of Florida and in the Big Ten at Northwestern University. So I've had the privilege of working with a ton of different kinds of athletes. A very big variety. So very familiar with a lot of different types of needs and the different things that come with athletics and just the demand on athletes of all ages and of all different kinds of sports. I specifically like to work with athletes, and I did research on athletes that are coming back from injury or surgeries. So return to play is a really big passion of mine, and I love working with athletes to help them get back on the field or court quicker through nutrition interventions. So that's just a little bit about me. We're going to go ahead and just dive into the topic then. Okay, so today what we're going to go over is, first of all, what a plant-based diet is, and then maybe some deficiencies or some things that you have heard that you might be lacking in nutritionally while following a plant-based diet, and then how to use the plant-based diet to your benefit. So how to build that performance plate, how to still have really good performance-based snacks, and then also how to get in your protein content. I know that's always the biggest concern as far as following a plant-based diet goes, and that turns off a lot of people. And so we're going to talk a little bit about today how you can still meet your protein needs even following a plant-based diet. Okay, so what the heck is a plant-based diet? The plant-based diet is eating primarily vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, and seeds, and getting a lot of your protein from those things. And depending on what type of plant-based diet you're following, there'd also be no fish or poultry. So there is a spectrum, as you can kind of see. So the most extreme plant-based diet being a vegan diet, so absolutely no animal byproducts at all, and no animal products. So no meat, no cheese, no dairy, none of those things, no eggs. And then you kind of have some in the middle where like a lacto uvu or just a lacto, where they'll do dairy products, or a pescatarian even, or a flexitarian. So they incorporate fish in their diet, and a flexitarian might do some kinds of poultry sometimes, depending on their needs. So there is a wide variety of different plant-based diets out there. So some possible deficiencies of following a plant-based diet are going to be your calories and your protein, primarily that protein aspect, just because a lot of plant sources don't necessarily always have all of the amino acids or all of the essential proteins that you need in order to build muscle, to recover well, and just to thrive as an athlete. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to make sure you are getting that if you are following a plant-based diet. So energy in general, it's just a little bit more difficult to get your calories, to get enough calories in, especially if you're following a little bit more of that extreme end, that vegan diet. So it's going to take away a lot of convenience foods from you. So a lot of bars, a lot of the supplemental stuff that might be available to you through your institution or through your team. It's also going to be harder to plan ahead. So it's just going to require that a little bit more as you go into it. But calories are a little bit more difficult to get. So your training demands are very high, but you need to also make sure you're replacing a good adequate amount of carbohydrates, protein, and healthy fats that are fitting within your dietary restrictions. So still making sure that you are always pre-fueling or eating before your workout, but also always recovering after your workout to help you get to that next workout or that next activity, and always just constantly refueling. It's going to be more important too to incorporate those snacks in between meals, since meals might be looking a little bit different on a plant-based diet for you. You're going to need to get your calorie intake in through snacks in between your meals. So that standard 3 meals a day for sure is that baseline, but then adding in, maybe a snack in between breakfast and lunch, and then another one between lunch and dinner, just to make sure you are meeting your calorie needs for the elite athlete that you are. And then protein. So protein is made up of amino acids. So that's kind of what I mentioned before. A lot of plant proteins don't contain all of them. So you're going to need to use combinations of foods, which we will go over in a couple of slides. So the biggest thing on a plant-based diet is to make sure that you are consuming a variety of protein sources throughout the day, because you're going to need a lot of vitamins, a lot of minerals. Just as an athlete, you have a higher need in general. So you're going to need to make sure that you're incorporating a good variety in order to still meet all of those needs while excluding those animal products. Okay, so continuing on with the possible deficiencies, we have iron and B12. So these are 2 really important components to your performance. Iron is extremely important because it is the part of your red blood cells that carries and transports your oxygen throughout your body, not just your heart, but throughout all your muscles. So it delivers the oxygen to your muscles. So if you're iron deficient, you're going to feel really fatigued. You're going to have a foggy brain. You might be at risk for cramping really badly and dehydration. So those are some signs. Your legs are especially the part that kind of feels it. So if you feel those things, definitely mention it to your doctor or physician and get some labs taken. It can be an easy fix and might require some supplementation, but you can also get it through a lot of plant-based sources. So if you do get those symptoms, make sure you are including and increasing legumes, those green vegetables, especially dark leafy greens. Spinach and kale are very high in iron, nuts and seeds, but then also some fortified cereals. So looking on the nutrition labels to make sure that there is some iron in the cereals that you are getting. And then a tip is always to remember you need vitamin C in order to transport and absorb iron well. So making sure that you are incorporating fruits, and maybe even a vitamin C supplement if vitamin C is difficult for you to get. But usually you can consume, some type of fruit with your meal, or some source of vitamin C with your meal in order to help with that absorption. And then B12 is extremely important for your energy production, for your nervous system, and then a lot of other biological processes, honestly. And you get B12 through other plant sources, similar to iron, that fortified cereal, getting it through a dietary supplement, and then things like nutritional yeast, which is used in a lot of meat substitutes. So plant-based meat substitutes, they'll include nutritional yeast for the B12 factors. And for a lot of other things that help it imitate the meat a little bit better. So just look for those things to incorporate in your diet if you are geared towards that plant-based diet. Calcium. So calcium comes from dairy products originally, and most richly. And so if you are following a more strict plant-based diet, calcium is going to be a little bit more difficult to get. It's extremely important for your bone and your teeth health. So anything that is hard on your body, so calcification, that's going to require calcium to build. And so that's obviously very important, especially if you're at a higher risk for stress fractures, or you've had stress fractures in the past, or just fractures in general in the past. You're at a higher risk of being calcium deficient. So it's extremely important to make sure that you are getting a good amount of calcium in your diet. You can get these from, again, those dark leafy greens, calcium fortified plant-based milks. So you can see it on the front. They'll advertise it. They'll usually put calcium with vitamin D because they do know that a lot of plant-based individuals will be deficient in those things. So they'll fortify cereals and milk in that. So look for that in the front of the carton. Beans and lentils, chia seeds, flax seeds, and then quinoa. Those are all really good sources of calcium. And then vitamin D, which I touched on a little bit, is extremely important for that absorption of the calcium. So that's also why they incorporate it in those fortified milks as well, because that's really important for your bone health and for energy as well. So it also pairs with B12 a lot in a lot of biological functions. So making sure that you are looking for those fortified things when you are eating according to a plant-based diet. Okay, so I know we talked a little bit about this for specific deficiencies, but just some signs of deficiencies in general that might require you to go talk to a physician or talk to your dietitian in order to get the appropriate labs for making sure that we supplement correctly. Look for chronic fatigue. Obviously, as an athlete, you're exhausted all the time. But this is an abnormal fatigue. So especially when you feel it almost like an ache in your muscles, and like your muscles don't want to continue to go, and it's an abnormal soreness, that would be that chronic fatigue. And then for females specifically, you're at a higher risk for being iron deficient specifically. And a huge thing to look for is absence of your menstrual cycle, especially if it's also irregular. That might be a sign that you have some deficiencies going on. If your performance is dipping off and you don't feel as strong, if you're continuing to get injured or you're getting sick a lot, if you have a lot of irritability or just mood swings in general, weight loss. So if you see yourself kind of dipping off in the weight area, GI issues, and then some thoughts that are around disordered eating. So it kind of goes with the mental health aspect. These deficiencies can affect not just your bodies, but also your minds. For protein, you want to focus on making sure that you're not, again, with that weight loss. If you have brittle hair and nails, and then also if you experience excessive hair loss, that might be a sign that you're not getting enough protein in your diet. Again, with the fatigue, if you have a hard time coming back from an injury or surgery, that might be a risk of, or a sign that you are protein deficient. And then also that muscle weakness that we talked about, and then edema. So edema is fluid retention. So if you pull off your shoes and your ankles and your feet are swelling up really badly, that's a sign that you are protein deficient. So look out for those things for yourself, and definitely mention that to a healthcare provider if you are experiencing those things, so that they can get ahead of it. It's a lot easier to get it on the front end than it is once it's progressed far and you are injured already, or you are trying to face these things alone. Okay, some more signs to look out for. Again, that fatigue. I think that's the biggest thing. So again, that abnormal fatigue, shortness of breath, headache, dizziness, lightheadedness, weakness just in general. If you are getting really pale, I know that sometimes when you are exercising, you'll turn very red. And then the thing to look out for iron is pale skin. So if you're not turning that natural red when you're working out and you're getting more pale and the blood is kind of draining from your face, especially, that's a sign of iron deficiency. And then poor circulation. So if you have really cold extremities, so in your hands and feet constantly, that's a sign that you might be iron deficient. And then for B12, we talked about B12 being involved in our energy production. So again, that fatigue, you're going to feel really foggy brained. And so you're going to have a difficult time with like thinking or connecting thoughts or forming sentences. And that's a really big sign that you are B12 deficient. Also, a sore and red tongue, which is a very unique sign of the deficiency. So that when you can't really misplace. So just looking out for these types of things. Again, a lot of this stuff overlaps. So just if you are feeling one or more of these things, ask your practitioner for some labs to get done to see and verify for supplementation purposes. And then calcium and vitamin D, I think the biggest thing to be aware of here is that bone and joint pain. I think that's really the biggest thing that I've noticed in my practice, is that there'll be an excessive amount of just kind of pain in general, because it's usually leading to some type of stress fracture or injury in general. So just look out for those things while you're playing or after you're playing and after you're recovering. Okay. So even though you've eliminated a lot of different things when you're following a plant-based diet, you can still build performance plates. It's still important to eat the rainbow, as we say, meaning getting a good variety, always incorporating a ton of color on your plate, trying to eat different things, try different things, just to keep your food fun, first of all, but then also to incorporate all those minerals and vitamins and get a good variety of them. So also making sure that you're prioritizing protein. I think the biggest thing to remember here is that a lot of plant-based proteins, one, like we talked about, are not complete, but also a lot of them are carbohydrate based as well. So when you're thinking about your plate and building your plate, remember that there's also carbohydrates in your quinoa, in your peas, in your beans, in your tofu. So you're still getting a good amount of carbohydrates in there. So depending on what your weight goals are, make sure that you are prioritizing your protein first and eating that protein first before you even move to your carbohydrates. And I would even say your vegetables and fruit, just because it's such an important component for you to succeed as an athlete. And then making sure that you're still always fueling for performance. And that comes when you do prioritize your protein and you eat the rainbow. Okay, so here's an example of kind of that balance of plate. Your grains and your starchy vegetables there, those vary based on your activity level. So if you are, because carbohydrates are our main source of energy, right? So when we have more activity, we need more carbohydrates. So our plate, as you can see the arrows right there. Whenever you're having an off day, or you're just maybe a light practice, you just did something on your own, maybe, then you can go towards that green arrow that says stand down on it and maybe do a little bit less carbohydrates for the day. And then on days where, you have a competition, or you're about to have a competition, or you have 2-a-days, you're going to require a lot more carbohydrates. So making sure that you're filling about half your plate full of carbohydrates in order to meet your needs. Your protein and your veggies kind of stay standard. So you want to make sure you're always getting a good dose of protein and a good dose of veggies. I always say for those that are eating a little bit more of that flexitarian or that pescatarian for fish and such, that your protein portion be the size of your hand. I know everybody's hands are a little bit different, but at least majority of your hand being that 3 to 4 ounce serving of protein to make sure you're getting the adequate amount at each meal. So for plant-based proteins, you want to make sure that you, like I said before, they're very carbohydrate heavy as well. So you want to make sure you are balancing your plate as far as keeping that in mind. There are very few sources that are plant-based that are purely protein. So if your protein, if you're eating tofu, for example, if your protein was to cover more than that little quarter of your plate and was to extend onto your carbohydrate portion, that would be okay. You're still going to get a good chunk of carbohydrates from that tofu, and you're going to also get meet your protein needs for that meal too. So keep that in mind when you're building your plates, especially following a plant-based diet. And this is just a good example and visual to show, still eating the rainbow, even when you're eating a plant-based diet. Okay, so this is a really cool slide. So if you're tuning in, make sure you screenshot this, or you go back later in your emails and you look at this, because this is going to really help you with making sure you're getting a good amount of protein throughout the day. And these are the serving sizes you need to meet those needs. So to keep that in mind, as you look at this, you can see that there isn't a ton that even hit that 10-gram mark. So I always speak in blocks of 10. So snacks should be about 10 grams of protein, and meals should be anywhere from like 25 to 30 grams of protein, just to make sure you're meeting your needs. So if you look at that, there's a lot of black beans that you're going to need to eat in order to make up that meal, which is okay. But keep in mind that that is going to be a little bit more difficult to reach. And so you're going to need to eat larger portions of those foods in order to meet your protein needs. I think that's the biggest thing that people don't understand is how much of a plant-based protein you need to eat in order to get to meet your needs, which is why a lot of people become deficient in protein and suffer from a lot of those side effects that we talked about. So please keep that in mind when you are choosing your plant-based protein sources. Look at the ones that have more in it. So those are the easier ones, obviously, to grab. So maybe that's a great thing to bring for snacks. Maybe it's a really good thing to mix with something else to make sure that you are getting an adequate amount. I know quinoa isn't on here, but quinoa is a protein-based grain. And so mixing quinoa with your chickpeas, your lentils, your black beans, that's going to already boost the amount of protein that you're getting in that serving. And you're also getting your carbohydrates. So you can fill that quarter and that half of your plate with a good stir fry of veggies and quinoa and a variety of tofu and beans or whatever you're feeling that day. Okay, so this is what I was talking about as far as making sure you're getting a complete protein from your plant-based proteins. You're going to need to combine some foods in order to make them a full dose of protein. So when you eat a steak, you're getting all the proteins, all the amino acids, all the building blocks you need to build muscle. Whenever you're eating legumes, for example, in this diagram, you're not getting everything you need from just the legumes. So the important thing is to know that information and then to combine it with the right food in order to get a complete protein. So some really good examples are below, and they're actually pretty natural things that you would normally combine anyway. So beans and rice. Surprisingly, even though rice is primarily carbohydrate food, it also has a good amount of protein in it and complements the beans to make a complete protein together. So same with whole grain bread and nut butters, pita bread and hummus, whole grain cereal. If you do eat dairy products, then it would be milk or yogurt. So there are ways to meet those needs. If you have more questions about that, or you have specific foods that you are curious about, that would be great questions to ask your dietitian if you do end up working with one. If you do choose to follow a plant-based diet, whether it's for social reasons, religious reasons, I do highly recommend you work with a dietitian in order to find these combinations that work best for you, so you don't run risk of becoming deficient in anything, because that can be very serious to your performance and your future as an athlete. Okay, so this is the part where it's going to require your participation. So it's a case study. We have a 15-year-old female. She's a lacto-uvu vegetarian, which means that she does eggs and dairy product as a soccer player. And she practices 5 days per week and has 1 to 2 games on the weekends. So looking at her diet here, give you guys a second to look at the diet. Got berries and yogurt for breakfast, toast with jam, some eggs scrambled with spinach and cheese. That's her breakfast. Then for lunch, she's got a calcium fortified orange juice, a black bean burger on a whole wheat bun with lettuce and tomato. She got some pretzels and hummus on the side. And then for dinner, it looks like she has a grain bowl with chickpeas, roasted vegetables, and avocado. And then her snack is a banana or apple with nut butter and or yogurt. And then she has cereal with milk, and she has trail mix. So what do you guys think? Based on her daily intake, would you say that she meets her protein needs? Anybody? Oops, sorry. Okay, well, I'm going to say that, yes, it looks like she's able to meet her protein needs. You can notice throughout the day, she's getting a variety of different protein sources. She's not just eating a handful of beans every time she wants to get her protein sources, or sticking to the same things at every meal. Even her carbohydrates and her vegetables are all different. So she's getting a really good variety. She's also getting some fortified foods. So you can see that she's getting calcium fortified orange juice. We're going to assume her cereal is fortified too. So she's getting a good amount of vitamin D in there and some minerals that she might be missing from not consuming animal products. So she also is a lacto-uvu, which she incorporates dairy. That does make it a little bit more convenient, especially for protein sources. So it looks like she's getting a good amount of protein throughout the day. And then the next question is, how would an athlete determine if they are meeting their energy needs? So if you were to write out your 24-hour recall or your whole day's worth of food, how would you be able to know whether or not you are meeting your energy needs? Okay, so the way to tell is one, by how you feel. So all those deficiencies, all of those side effects that we talked about earlier, those are sure signs that you are not meeting your calorie needs, especially if you're not meeting your calorie needs day after day. You're gonna feel it. As an athlete, you are super in tune with your body and constantly in need, basically, of energy because you're expending it constantly. So you should be able to feel that as a difference if you are not eating enough or not consuming enough. Another way to know is if you do start to lose weight rapidly, especially for males. Females, it takes a little bit longer to notice that, but for most females, I should say. But for male athletes, usually you will start to lose weight pretty quickly if you're not meeting your needs day after day. So just look out for those things and try to keep track of any signs or symptoms. And then also tracking your weight pretty regularly can be helpful if you're thinking that you are not meeting your energy needs. You'll also feel it, like I said, over and over again in those deficiencies, that fatigue. You're really going to feel fatigued and not going to feel like you're able to give your best. And that's a sure sign that you need to change what you're eating and your diet and make sure you're getting some more calories in. So now going through her meals every day, or for this day, I'm sorry. What are some alternatives that you could think of for her breakfast, maybe her lunch or her dinner meals, or even her snack, honestly? Does anybody have any suggestions or trade outs that they would try out? Okay, I'll throw out a couple. So for breakfast, she's got her berries and yogurt, and then she has toast with jam, and she's got eggs and scrambled with spinach and cheese. Another alternative could be a Greek yogurt parfait. So instead of just doing yogurts and berries, as kind of that side dish to the scrambled eggs, she could do a full parfait, and she could put nuts and seeds and berries and granola in there with some Greek yogurt. A good serving of Greek yogurt is going to give you about 15 grams. And then all your extra toppings and nuts and such should also help with giving you that. Put a spoonful of peanut butter in there. You're going to add some healthy fats to that meal. So I think that would be an excellent alternative. An example for her dinner, it could be she could do pasta with some marinara and some veggies mixed in there with some tofu or some lentils or whatever her preference would be. So those are some switch outs that you can do and still get a good variety. You don't have to eat the same things every day as a plant-based eater. It's like we said before, it's great to get a variety. It just might take a little bit of time to get some ideas on what you like in the plant-based diet and how to make that easy on you. So we're going to go ahead and move to the second case study. It looks like we have a 17-year-old male vegan swimmer. So remember, vegan is that stricter side of the plant-based diet. So it's no animal products, no animal byproducts. And by byproducts, I mean dairy, eggs, anything that comes from an animal. With a daily practice 3 times a week and 2 practices 3 times a week. So very typical swimming schedule. Quite a bit of activity. Swimmers are obviously have very high demand for energy. So let's go ahead and look at his day-to-day. We got breakfast, which is a whole wheat bagel with nut butter and bananas with a glass of calcium fortified orange juice. We got lentil tacos for lunch with lettuce, salsa, and avocados. He drinks some plant-based milk with that, or has some yogurt on the side, and then a fruit cup. And then for dinner, we got some chickpea pasta, which Bonza Pasta, shout out. I do not work with them at all, but that is a great pasta if you are working on eating a plant-based diet. That's a great way of getting some plant-based protein in just a pasta dish, with some red sauce and side salad with an oil-based dressing. And then for a snack, we got bananas or apples with some nut butter or some plant-based yogurt, cereal with a plant-based milk, and trail mix. So looking at his diet and his 24-hour recall, do you think this athlete would be meeting their protein needs? Okay. So I'm going to say that this athlete is probably not meeting their protein needs, based on the serving sizes of protein that they're getting at each meal. And then some of those not being completed with other amino acids to help complete the meals. They might not be getting enough. The whole wheat bagel in the morning with some nut butter and banana. Nut butters are amazing sources of healthy fats, but they are not super high in protein unless you eat a huge amount of them. So using that as kind of your main source of protein for breakfast is not going to get you very far. And unfortunately, it is difficult to make that up throughout the day. So once you've shorted yourself for one meal, it's kind of hard to get more later on in the day, and especially following a plant-based diet. And then we got examples like plant-based milk or yogurt. We also have that. We have that twice, and then we have nut butter being used another time. And then we don't have a very big dinner either. So when you do plant-based milk or you do your plant-based yogurts, always make sure, like we talked about, looking for that fortified. But also a lot of the times these days, people will add back protein from a plant-based source into a lot of yogurts and dairy products or dairy imitation products. So make sure you're looking for that, because just a plant-based like almond milk or soy yogurt or coconut yogurt, they're not going to have a lot of protein in it. It's going to be primarily carbohydrates. So make sure you're looking for those fortified products or those products that have some protein added back into it, so that you are getting a good serving of protein throughout the day. And then looking at their diet also, not only do you think they're meeting their protein needs, but do you think they're meeting their overall energy needs? Okay, so I mean, I kind of touched on it a little bit when I was answering the first one, but my assumption would be no, especially with if you look at their output. So you have 3 times a week, they have daily practice, and then they have 2 practices 3 times a week. That's a lot. I know we don't know time, so we don't know how long their practices are, but that's a lot of activity. So in looking at their diet, I think they're getting a good amount of carbohydrates in, but I still feel like they're not quite meeting their needs for the activity demand that they're outputting. And then that last question, same as before, what are the alternatives that we could offer? So I think this is a good one to go back and review some alternatives, just because we talked about how maybe there wasn't enough energy as well as there wasn't enough protein. So that whole wheat bagel with nut butter and banana, maybe replacing that with a plant-based smoothie. So incorporating vegan protein in there, incorporating some extra calories as far as you can keep the nut butter, you can keep the bananas, and a lot of times, if you use plant-based milk that's fortified, you'll get that calcium fortification in there as well. So if you start with your day with that smoothie, it's going to be a little bit more well rounded and going to give you a little bit more. Or you can do some oatmeal. You can do some oatmeal with some protein powder added as well to get that good balance. And you can top it with berries or fruit to add that color. That's a good example of a plant-based breakfast that's going to get you a good amount of protein. And then for lunch, lentil tacos with lettuce, salsa, and avocado. Still a great lunch. Again, it's just going to be how much of that you're going to eat. I would recommend doing a side of brown rice with that as well, just to boost your amount of calories overall, but also because we talked about before, brown rice does have some protein in it, and it's going to offer a complete offering for the lentils, or pairing for the lentils, I should say. So that would be a great alternative for your lunch. And then for dinner, chickpea pasta with red sauce. Chickpeas are going to give you a good source of protein. They're an excellent source. I just don't know how much you're going to be able to get from a full bowl of pasta. So adding in a little bit of tofu to that. So dicing that up, sauteing that, flavoring it however you'd like, and throwing that in there is going to boost the amount of protein that you get out of that meal. And then as far as snacks go, those snacks are pretty good. They're going to keep you full. They have some healthy fats. They have some carbohydrates, a little bit of protein in that. But again, in order to meet your needs, I would even incorporate some vegan-based protein shakes or protein powder in there. Even doing oatmeal for a snack there if you didn't have it for breakfast, and incorporating that. Those can be some other alternative options. Okay, so some frequently asked questions about plant-based diet. I know there's a lot of myths and a lot of information out there. A lot of people think that it magically makes them healthier if they eat plant-based, which is not always true. But there are a lot of benefits to a plant-based diet. So the question is a plant-based diet as beneficial as a diet that includes animal proteins? It can be. The answer is it can be. So like I said before, I would highly recommend you work with a dietitian to make it work to your benefit, to make it individualized so that you make sure that you aren't falling short. Because if you aren't, it will work just as good as an animal-based diet. You are going to be missing out on some main components, but again, you can work with a dietitian and they can help you make sure you're getting a good variety that will help offer those deficiencies where you might be at risk for deficiencies. So that second question is, can you get enough protein while consuming a plant-based diet? Again, yes, absolutely. It's just going to be a little bit more inconvenient and a little bit more difficult to do. Might require just a little bit more planning ahead, creating grocery lists and doing some meal preps. It's just going to eliminate a lot of very easily accessible foods. So you can't just throw a protein bar in your backpack. You're going to need to look for plant-based protein bars specifically, or do a little bit more homework in order to meet those needs and keep it as convenient as an animal-based diet would be. And then, is a plant-based diet better for athletic performance? No. There is nothing in research that supports that a plant-based diet is going to make you a better athlete. A lot of professional athletes tout their plant-based diets, and say, that's what made them change, or made them elite, or got them to this level. But you have to remember, for a lot of professional athletes, they also have personal chefs and people that are catering and tailoring their diet. They work with dietitians so that their meals are perfectly tailored to exactly what they need. Their macronutrients are being met continually, and they don't have to worry about it. So obviously they're not doing all the work that it does take to get all of your components in with a plant-based diet. So no, it is not going to magically make you a better athlete, but there are some benefits to it, right? So what are some benefits to a plant-based diet? That's that last question. But you're going to incorporate a ton more minerals and vitamins, because a lot of your protein is all your protein is coming from plant sources, and plant sources are what contains a lot more mineral rich and vitamin rich nutrients. So it's going to definitely help you if you do it correctly. It's going to make you feel very good. A lot of athletes report that it can make them feel a little bit like cleaner, and it can make them feel a little bit better because they also are eating a lot of more fiber. So they're staying fuller longer. Their energy is being prolonged. They're having regular bowel movements. So these are all things that are going to make you feel energized and feel good. So what are the potential drawbacks, though, of plant-based diet? Like we said, highly inconvenient. There is not a ton of very tasty plant-based convenience foods out there. In order to enjoy a plant-based diet, and not just eat rabbit food every day for lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it does require a little bit extra effort and a little bit extra planning. So making that grocery list and looking up recipes that you can have so that you can still have a convenient dinner when you come home, or a lunch to take to school with you. So it's just a little bit extra work, and sometimes it can be a little bit more expensive. It doesn't have to be, but because you're going to need to consume a lot more, and you're going to have a lot more variety. You have to purchase a lot more types of foods and a lot more of foods in order to meet your needs. So just keep that in mind when you are, if you're thinking about starting a plant-based diet. Again, there are benefits and there are some drawbacks. It's not going to make you a magical athlete, but it's definitely going to help if you are feeling, any kind of negative side effects from animal products. So can you change your body composition on a plant-based diet? Yes, you can. You can also change your composition on an animal-based diet. So again, there's nothing magical about a plant-based diet. It's just a way of eating, and learning how to eat that way is kind of what we wanted to talk about today in order to meet your goals. And you can still do all the things that you normally do as an athlete. It really doesn't matter which diet you consume. It's really just your preference. Okay, so some action steps and review. If you are a plant-based diet eater, consider your commitment to the plant-based lifestyle. So whether it's for religious reasons or it's for ethical reasons, think about that. Think about what the risk versus reward is for you as an athlete. Again, I am not here to preach against the plant-based diet or promote it. I'm just giving you the facts on the nutritional components of it. But I always tell my athletes whenever they come in my office to talk about being on a plant-based diet or starting a plant-based diet, I just tell them, okay, get ready. You're going to need to spend a lot of money, and you're going to need to do a lot more work than you do right now to get your food. So just think about those things. If it's worth it to you because of religious or ethical reasons, or you truly do feel best when you eat that way, that's completely fine. Just know what kind of road is ahead of you, and use your resources. So if you do have the ability to work with a dietitian, use a dietitian to take that load off of you, to take some of the hard work it is to maintain that off of you. And then identify and address any nutrient deficiencies. So if you do start a plant-based diet, really start to pay attention to your body. Make sure your weight isn't dipping off. Make sure that you aren't getting overly fatigued. Make sure you're not experiencing a lot of the other deficiencies we talked about. And then also, if you are, letting somebody know so they can nip it in the bud right away. And then make sure that you are, as always, whether you're following an animal-based or a plant-based diet, focus on your fueling and properly fueling, and then also consistently fueling. So the other thing I will say that people don't talk about either as much is when you shift from a plant-based diet to an animal-based diet, or you're not consistent with one or the other, it can also kind of throw your body off a little bit, and it can kind of make you have a lot of GI upset. So if you're going to commit to a plant-based diet, commit to it. Stay consistent with it. If you're going to commit to an animal-based diet, commit to that and stay with that. Both need variety, both have challenges, and both have benefits. So it really is up to your preference and the commitment you're willing to put forward. Okay, and so this last part is this is the QR code for if you want to work with a sports dietitian, like we talked about throughout this whole presentation. If you really want to be serious about a plant-based diet and be an elite athlete on a plant-based diet, please start right. Work with somebody that can help put you on the right path and the path to success, because you can be successful on a plant-based diet. I would just hate to see you do it the wrong way and get injured and be at risk for all of those deficiencies. So please, please seek out a professional in helping you do this. And the way to start with that is just to scan this code and to look through some of the profiles of the people that you get to work with and find the one that best fits for you. Okay, so the quote for this presentation is, just believe in yourself, even if you don't pretend that you do, and at some point you will. So I love this quote. I love the Williams sisters. So I think that this is really positive to focus on, no matter what your goals are, nutrition goals, performance goals, whatnot. You have to believe in yourself in order to accomplish those things. You have to commit to it, just like we talked about with the diet. And working with professionals is that first step forward of committing to whatever lifestyle you are wanting to pursue. So even if you are on a animal-based diet and you are still feeling some of those deficiencies that we talked about, that might be a sign that you still need to work with somebody. Or if you're just not reaching your goals the way that you want to and you're doubting yourself, let a dietitian come alongside you and rebuild your confidence and really help you reach those goals. Okay, this is the whole thing we were talking about. So personalized, affordable, and proven. The best thing about working with a dietitian is that it's really the individualized part. There's a lot of stuff we talk about on these presentations. There's a lot of things and information you can receive or you can read, but it is not a one size fits all. You are unique and you have unique needs and unique challenges. And the dietitian can come alongside of you and really pour the time into individualizing your care and giving you what you specifically need, whether that's a weight goal you're trying to reach, whether that's nutrient timing, so like pregame meal planning or recovery planning, how to put into action all the information you've learned in this series and in the series to come. Or you're trying to look into a bunch of supplements. You got your nutrition down, or you feel like you got your nutrition down and you want to take things to the next level. Or you're experiencing deficiencies and you want a supplement for it, but you don't know how much or what kind or whether it's safe or not. These are all great questions that you can ask a dietitian. And then the best part, I think, and I think as an athlete especially, is needed, that weekly check-in or that accountability aspect. I think that's going to be a huge game changer in helping you reach any kind of goals that you are trying to reach. So again, you can go ahead and scan that QR code and you can flip through the different profiles of the dietitians we have available and see which one best fits you. These are our references. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions today? All right. If we don't have any questions, then I'm going to go ahead and close out. So thank you so much for everybody's time and for listening to this. I really highly encourage you, if you are going to start a plant-based diet, that you go ahead and look into working with one of our dietitians so that we can help you. But have a great rest of your day and the rest of your week. Good luck.